Before I moving on to my first argument, as the leader of opposition, I want to give you rebuttals from the affirmative team. That firstly, affirmative team talks a lot about successful path, and success is not definable for everyone. Success has fast and difference. But here they give example about writers that if the writers can make work better than the before, then the writer is success. Individually, yes, but when you look at larger scales, that it's really that in the middle class, you need to have financially support yourself from your income. If the novel or the writing of this child or this person is not good enough, the salary is not good enough, and how can they support their own self and their family with their incomes? And not only that, even they happy because of their writings, they achieve what they wanted, they are not happy because the stressful of the stress and financial again. But the second thing is, even though it's successful, writers is not really accepted in society. People almost look down about the writers. So what we want to, that even though you are a writers, if you have a formal education tracking, you still get a better and qualified by our society. So it's better to take a safe rather than sorry. And secondly, about the self-learn that being said by the affirmative team, that self-learn can be achieved by online resources, it's free. Yes, it is free, but have you ever thought about the distraction? Even though you have a lot of resources, if you distracted and not fall into the online the resources, or is that self-learn, you still cannot do maximize. And that's why the formal education use you to sit down and focus on what you want to learn. It's not a bad thing, it's not actually a positive thing, but students tend to think it's a bad thing. And that's my rebuttals. So moving on to my first argument, and I want to remind you about the status quo that the affirmative team sadly and unfortunately doesn't give out to us, ladies and gentlemen, that we saw in our society, in our work right now, in our job, in our marketing, that we actually in this tech companies bubble burst. What is that? Let me explain. What is tech companies bubble burst? So bubble burst, or we can say in short the bubble, is actually a term where the investor, the one who pays, is much larger and wanted the profit back. So here, when the investor invests in the companies, that's a lot of money, and these companies burn a lot of money. They use a lot of money to make or to invent something, invent and do other invention for the sake of the company still built up. But the thing is, when the company is stuck, then the money it cannot get that big profit. And this is the problem. When there are a lot of investors wanting the profit, but then the company itself cannot make a good profit to ensure themselves to can make another invention or to support themselves to pay their employee, then that's a problem. And that's why they need to cut off some of their resources or human resource, such as undo the contract or cut the contract with the employees. And this is why we saw a lot of employees being cut off from the companies. For example, Zenius and Robinhood in America, and etc. A lot of tech companies actually suffering. Oh, and Netflix actually have been a lot suffering right now because a lot of subscribers from them is actually declining, and a lot of the employees cannot be paid, so they must cut off them. And this is why, even though they say that the affirmative say that this is really urgent. I'm sorry, affirmative, but you didn't look at the status quo that right now we have the tech bubble, and the urgency that you say it's become a disaster for the job market, the job as such as digital marketing, designer, and video creator, etc. That's the first argument. Whether that is first argument against my status quo regarding about their. That's my rebuttal regarding about their successful traits with my status quo. But here, my argument is, when we see our status quo, then it's to, as the parent in middle class where you don't have a lot of money, of course you want more safety and more ensurable to your kids, to your children, to have a better future and to stick with traditional way. Because why? When you have a good formal education, you can go to university, you can get a stable job, and if you want to go to the digital, if you want to your kids to pursue in digital, it's alright. It can be their second job. Their second job can be more resourceable, yes, I will say, but we want the stable one, so this middle class doesn't suffer more and more as the tech bubble. Imagine if this child doesn't prioritize their formal education when the tech bubble is come for them. They don't have any backup plan or any backup job that they can use for supporting themselves, and they're in middle class, so they will be unemployed. And that's why my first argument, we believe as the middle class we should prioritize the formal education in order to protect our children's future if something happens not right, such as the tech bubbles that actually happen right now in our status quo. And secondly, in my second argument, prioritizing the formal education is actually make your content more better. It's still important in your job, in your life, in your society, but when you still serious pursuing your formal education, that formal education can actually be your content. For example, you write something such as novel or something, you can make a historical reference that make your story more interesting, your writing more interesting. And you can go to games developer or gaming or do some coding, and you need math and some of calculation in this formal school. And if you want to be a designer, you have to have this philosophical meaning visually that you can achieve by university with some theory that can provide you some of theory and practical that may lead to your better creation in your content creation. So that's why we believe as the opposition team, we believe that this kind of motion should be opposed. Because why? We still believe our formal education is still important enough for us, for our job, for our hobbies, and for our future as a middle class. And that's why, Judge, I close my case. Thank you.